So, hello again. This is a second part to the video, the first one, and this is covering the interview process. So, I had come to New York about 6 times before actually living here, and every time for me that I came here, it was for a visit for like a conference. I was a tourist, and I had my fiance here, and so I would just go with him to his place in Brooklyn. So he would just be my guide tour, and I wouldn't know where anything is or was, or know what outside of Manhattan of what the city is, because there is a difference of living here and just being a tourist. So with all of that in mind, they said, okay, you have interviews. I literally also had interviews all spread out. I selected
Well, you should start about the... Okay, so there are hiring rounds.
Right. Oh, yes.
They have like 4 hiring rounds. 3 of them are before. I think 3 of them are before.
They are, right.
So if you're out of state, you have the opportunity to visit New York 1 or more times to go through the hiring rounds. And basically you put in like your preferences for like which borough you prefer to work in, which like setting. You go through all these like different
what school
surveys
type
and questionnaires, and they match you with schools. Ultimately, keep in mind, and a lot of people didn't keep this in mind, your preferences are literally preferences.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Those are preferences. They're not legitimate. I'm gonna have this job that I really want.
Yeah.
You're gonna be placed in the high need.
Like people, a lot of the core members who they were from out of state put like, oh, I want to work in Manhattan, or I want to work in Brooklyn, and they thought they'd be working in like the nice parts. But the reality is the schools that you're going to be working in are not in nice areas. And so Dwayne and I both work in the South Bronx in pretty rough areas. So just there will be a culture shock. The community is definitely diverse, but it's doable. But you will experience some things that will shock you. So just be prepared that when they match you with the schools, if you get hired by a school and you say you get 4 schools, so they match you with 4 schools, and you go on 4 interviews, because you have to attend all the interviews to be able to get hired,
right,
to be able to get an offer. So you go and you do the interviews, and then say one school that you really didn't like hires you. You have no choice. You have to accept that school offer.
Right, because you've been trying to get out of her school, which is a different story, but they won't move her because it's not an extenuating, severe circumstance.
Right, and even my school is pretty, the situation is pretty unique, because Dwayne and I actually work at transfer schools, which
we'll talk about later.
Yeah, most school members don't do that, but just so you know that the process is unique. There's not a lot of autonomy over what
you get to decide.
On.
And so a little to go more into depth on that. Please have a school. If you could have an interview where you're set at a school before coming here, that would be great, because that would determine where you live. Because a lot of core members travel an hour, like an average between 30 to an hour plus, to get from where they live to where they work, because of the train system and how transportation works. I'm not sure if you're wanting to bring a car, you have to take that into consideration. Transportation, money for getting you from place to place. Here the way it works is you can get a Metro card. A weekly one is $33, a monthly one is $129, and whatnot. This is all on you, on preparing your expenses to come here. So if you could have a match with a school before coming here, so that you know where to live, whether that's with your roommate, whether it's with somebody that you're going to meet at TFA that wants to live close, but just keep that into perspective. And so for me, coming here for the interview process, I was in Brooklyn, and a lot of the schools were in Brooklyn. However, none of them accepted me. I was literally on the maps, just preparing my demos, have everything printed out, your resumes, because a lot of the principals asked for resumes, and then I have it on hand. So that was my fault, and that was kind of awkward. But also know what a teacher is like. Some of the questions that they're going to ask you are about, school culture, and what does it mean for a positive management system, behavior management systems. You need to know what IEPs are. You are placed with special education. Read up on those acts of the IDEA. When did that first start out? Like, how can you best support if you are in an ICT setting or in a SET setting? What resources you could provide? If you don't know what that means, you need to research what IEP, what ICT, how you're going to advocate for your children, what that looks like inside the classroom and outside of the classroom. How are you going to build relationships with families, but also how are you going to uplift the culture and the staff? How are you going to better prepare communication, whether that's through conferences? And you have to think about just the school schedule in general, with the climate and how environmental factors affect the student day to day, and how you are going to need to individualize your lesson plans. If you don't know like what a lesson plan looks like, go ahead and take a look at that. Go ahead and take at the objectives, what the expectations are of the students, and know how you're going to handle that from your day to day, because those are questions from the interview process that you're going to get, and based on whether you're going to teach middle school, high school, or kindergarten, or transfer school, which is sometimes which I highly advise reading up on the school to prison pipeline, which a lot of schools and transfer schools are trying to fight against, and through a social justice lens.
But also what he's telling you to like read up on is going to help you for your Educating All Students test, which is the certification test that all core members have to take regardless of their certification area. Is she special education?
Yes, she is.
Okay, yeah.
So that's the second part of this video.